It's been a while. Well, from home at least. 2020 was by far the busiest year for me as a coaster enthusiast, and realistically the busiest year of my life, period. Well over 15,000 miles driven, 32 different parks, 25 of those parks being brand new parks to me. And between all of these parks, I have acquired 87 new coaster credits, bringing my total coaster count to 438. I was hoping to hit 500 this year, but didn't quite happen, but it is what it is. I still had a fantastic year this year. Of the 87 new coasters I've ridden this year, there's a few that really stood out to me among the rest. This is my top 15 new coaster credits for 2023. Now before we go diving into this, if you haven't already, make sure you hit that subscribe button. I'm watching you. Seriously, I can see every viewer who hasn't subscribed, so I see you. So if you haven't yet, I'd appreciate it if you would. Helps my channel fight against the YouTube algorithm. Well, I knew this was coming. How you been, dude? Haven't seen you in a minute.
I have been well, thank you for asking. I would not recommend this video to anybody, because your channel belongs to me.
Yeah, I don't think so. Bulby, do your work.
Why is he doing that?
Yeah, you're a good boy. I guess I keep you around for a reason. Not really. This is the real personality of my channel right here. I'm nothing to this channel. Bulby is where it's at. This is the reason why the Ride Guy exists. It's for Bulby. He's going to give you all a nice, good lick. I think he got you. One more. Give him one more. There you go. You've been blessed. Okay, I think he wants to be put down. He's being a little tooty with me today. This is a coaster channel. Why am I talking to a skink? Alright, onto the coasters. For number 15, we are going to go to Dollywood. This year was my first year going to Dollywood as a coaster enthusiast. I've been to Dollywood before back in 2014, but that was well before my enthusiast days. So it was great to finally go back to Dollywood with a different and more enlightened coaster enthusiast perspective. Is that really a better perspective? Probably not, but sure. I had 4 new credits to get here, and 3 of them make this list. Number 15 would be Big Bear Mountain. What stood out to me the most about this ride was how long of a ride it is. 3,990 feet, and honestly, it feels even longer than that. I really should proofread these scripts before I say them. It has 3 launches. They weren't the craziest launches, but they were still pretty fun. The most surprising part of this ride was some of the positive G's that you pull on it, especially on the turn after the highest point of the ride. After the 3rd launch, I was shocked how many positive G's I felt during that part of the ride. And Helix towards the end of the ride, you also pull some pretty impressive positive G's for a family coaster at least. But the ride is just that. It is a family coaster, but it's a damn good family coaster. Sure, the ride may not have the greatest theming in the world, but I think the setting may be a little bit better in a few years once all the trees and the shrubbery grow in around the ride. You can see that they have some greenery planted there, but it just isn't quite grown in yet. So maybe in a few years it'll look a little bit better. For number 14, we are going to go to Lost Island in Iowa. And of course, it's no Puko. No, it's Matugani. This ride is short, small, but it's a very punchy coaster. The best way I could describe it is a mini Copperhead Strike, but with a better launch. Bigger isn't always better. I think that might be a theme today. The small, compact layout of this ride is what gives it its bite. And both of the inversions are hang time based, so it's kind of cool to get some decent airtime with some good hang time on the same ride. With a good launch too. For number 13, we are going to Six Flags Fiesta, Texas. This was my first time visiting this park, and there are many new coasters that I was very eager to get on, and 3 of them make this list. The first one is Dr. Diabolical's Cliffhanger. I always enjoy a good dive coaster. Despite it having the vest restraints, which I'm personally not a big fan of vest restraints, it was still a lot of fun, and the ride still delivers a fair amount of airtime. This is absolutely a front row ride, which normally I feel dive coasters are a back row ride, but this is definitely a front row ride. I also appreciate the pre-show that the ride has and the storytelling behind it. It's just cool to see Six Flags add to the ride experience with something like that. You don't see that all too often. But the downside to that pre-show is that it does kind of make this ride a little bit hard to marathon. There were a couple times when I would ride the ride, come back into the station, and there would be nobody next in line, but the ride operators would make me go back around, and I would have to go through the entire pre-show again just to get another ride in. I'm not sure if that's a standard procedure for every day, but that's just what they were doing the day I was there. But despite that, that doesn't take away from the ride experience itself. It's still a damn good ride. It was also cool to see a Beyond Vertical drop from B&M finally. It took them all these years to finally do a Beyond Vertical drop. Makes me even more excited for Iron Menace at Dorney Park for next year. For number 12, we are staying in Texas, but we are going to SeaWorld San Antonio. And this is where I spent 4th of July this year. While there weren't too many coasters here, 2 of them still made this list. The first one being Texas Stingray, and honestly, I don't understand a lot of the hate that this ride gets. I thought this was a fantastic GCI. Okay, it's a little bit rough, but I felt like that kind of added to the intensity of the ride. What can I say? I like my wood rough. Great pacing, solid airtime, definitely a front row ride. The back row doesn't hit quite as hard, but still pretty fun. I wouldn't say it's the best GCI out there, but potentially a top 5 one for me. For number 11, we are going to Colorado for Glenward Caverns. This park easily has the most amazing views for any park I've ever been to, and every coaster at this park maximizes that view. Now, the coaster that most people think of for this park is Defiance. While Defiance was a fun ride, that's not my pick for this park. This may sound odd, but my pick is Alpine Coaster. While the ride isn't anything too extreme being a mountain coaster, the view on this ride is everything. Being on top of a massive mountain surrounded by other mountains was truly a surreal experience. There are other mountain coasters that I've done that are also on mountains, but you're surrounded by trees and woods, and all you see is wood. On this one, you see all the mountains all around you, and I've never seen a more breathtaking view on a coaster ever in my life. You can't deny this looks cooler than this. One of my favorite coaster moments of this entire year, and possibly in my entire coaster enthusiast life, was riding this ride. Just being on a mountain coaster, being so far away from home, and just taking in that beautiful view. There's honestly no words that I can come up with that just describe how surreal that was. And it's a pretty fun quad down towards the end. For number 10, we are going back to Six Flags Fiesta, Texas for Superman Krypton Coaster. Now, this one really took me by surprise. Normally, I'm very unimpressed by B&M loopers and floorless coasters. There's only a small handful that have ever wowed me. So I had pretty low expectations for this ride, despite it having a fair amount of hype behind it. But I was pleasantly surprised how fun this ride was. The setting on the quarry wall makes this ride for me. Especially in the front row, right side, diving off the quarry wall twice. It was just so much fun. It was just a cool setting. I've never experienced something like that on a coaster ever before in my life. The rest of the ride is about what you'd expect from B&M looper elements. Nothing outstanding, but still overall fun. But the setting is what made this ride for me. Number 9, we are going to stay at Six Flags Fiesta, Texas for the last coaster from that park on this list, and that would be Iron Rattler. There was a lot of praise and hype behind this ride, and I tried not to let that get to me. And I can't deny, the ride lives up to its hype. I wouldn't say it's the best RMC out there, but easily the top 5. Again, the quarry wall is an awesome setting for this ride, going up and down that quarry twice, especially that last dive off the quarry wall, especially in the back row. One of my favorite moments on a coaster, period. Followed by going down into a cave to finish off the ride. It's an awesome finale to the ride. My only gripe about the coaster is that it does kind of lose its pacing the second time you go up onto the quarry, and it just sort of meanders a little bit. It kind of loses a little bit of steam, but I wouldn't say it destroys the pacing. If anything, it just kind of gives you a breather for the giant yeet moment that you're about to have going off the wall. Number 8, we are going back to Dollywood for Lightning Rod. Now, this was a ride I wasn't quite sure how to go into it mentally, because I knew it wasn't as good as it formerly used to be. I heard many people say that it was much better before the iBox track was added, and the launch used to be so much better than what it was currently. But again, I try not to let that get to my head and just experience the ride for what it is. And I gotta say, for my first ride, I was honestly pretty let down by it. It just didn't pull the forces that I was expecting it to pull in the back row. But I had many people telling me that I absolutely had to do it in the front row. I was reluctant to wait for the front row, saying that it was only on one train operations with the days that I was there, and it was going down pretty often on those days. Well, despite that, I still sucked it up and I waited for the front row, and I'm very glad I did, because this was a completely different ride in the front row. I know the launch isn't as good as it used to be, but I felt like it still had a little bit of a kick to it. I wouldn't know what it originally felt like, but from what I felt, it was still fine. There are a few potholes throughout the ride, but honestly, I think Outlaw Run has some worse potholes. The quad down was pretty damn good in the front row too. Can't deny that. That's easily the best part of the ride in my opinion. Having said that though, I will say that I feel like Lightning Rod is still massively overrated. It is nowhere near the best RMC in my opinion. And now that it's going to be losing its launch and it's going to be a chain lift, I can only see it going down even further in my rankings in the future. But hey, time will tell, I guess. For number 7, we are going to Six Flags over Texas. Again, this was my first time visiting this park. Many coasters I was very excited to ride, but only one of them really stood out to me, and that would be Shockwave. And the airtime in this ride is just shocking. I'm not sorry. I never would have thought that a classic steel coaster would have this kind of ejector on it, especially in the back row. It was just ridiculous how strong the ejector was on some of these hills. And the double loops were extremely intense too. I grayed out on every single ride at that part of the ride. And this is easily my favorite Schwarzkopf coaster, and nothing's even close. This was just such a fun ride, and I hope that the park maintains this ride properly to keep it around for many more years to come. For number 6, we are going back to Dollywood one more time for Thunderhead. Yes, I like Thunderhead better than Lightning Rod. I am not sorry.
Surprise, motherfucker.
As of right now, this is easily my favorite GCI coaster. The pacing on this ride is absolute perfection. It's very smooth. At least it was running very good the days I was there. The airtime is very strong, especially in the front row. I got a few rides on Thunderhead that I had a lot of wiggle room in the front row, and I'm pretty sure I saw God on that ride. And here's another I'm not sorry moment. Thunderhead craps on Mystic Timbers. For number 5, we are going back to SeaWorld San Antonio for Steel Eel. I had high expectations for this ride, and holy shit, it delivered. Both the front and the back rows are great. Strong airtime at different parts of the ride depending on where you're sitting. The airtime was so strong that it was literally spanking me against my seat. Well, I feel violated now. The finale in the front row in this ride is absolutely ridiculous. It's very reminiscent to the triangle hills on Magnum XL200. It wasn't butter smooth, but moderately smooth. A few potholes here and there and a little bit of shuffling here and there, but nothing even worth complaining about. And this is easily the best Morgan coaster in the country. Again, size doesn't matter. For number 4, we are going to Lagoon in Farmington, Utah. This park really is not easy to get to, but it is absolutely worth visiting. And my pick for this spot alone makes this park worth coming to, and that would be Cannibal. I cannot believe that this is a house-built coaster. Not only because of how massive the ride is and how amazing the layout is, but also the complicated elevator lift structure that it has too. It looks like a Gerstlauer, but it does Gerstlauer better than Gerstlauer does Gerstlauer. The first drop is easily a top 5 first drop at any coaster I've ever been on. Possibly my favorite beyond vertical drop ever. The drop is just so drawn out and it doesn't pull out too soon. The implement is about what you'd expect from it, but the dive loop you get a surprising pop-up of lateral ejector on it. The Lagoon roll is one of my favorite versions of all time. I'm a sucker for hang time and that hits my heart just right. If you ever have a chance to visit this park, do not pass up the chance to visit it. This is absolutely a must-do park for any coaster enthusiast. For my number 3 spot, we are going to Michigan's Adventure. Now keep in mind that this is one of the smaller Cedar Fair parks and possibly the most neglected park in the chain. And somehow it still has this. Granted, this ride was here before Cedar Fair owned the park, but still, it's just shocking that a park this small has this. I've always heard mixed reviews about this ride, and holy shit, did it surprise the hell out of me. The front row on the camelbacks is pure ejector. Honestly, every row on the camelbacks is pure ejector, no matter where you're sitting. But it is definitely a front row ride. I can't deny it is a little bit rough and it can be difficult to marathon. Once you become a little bit familiar with the ride and learn how to brace for certain parts, it's a little bit easier to marathon and the roughness can be overlooked a little bit. I'll never forget my last ride on this ride for that day. While I was waiting in line for my last ride of the day on the ride, I ran into one of the founders of Gravity Group. He worked with CCA at the time the ride was being built and he helped build and design this ride. So it was pretty awesome to ride the front row of a coaster with the person who helped build and design the ride. For my number 2 spot, we are going to my home park, Hershey Park, and I think we all know where this is going. Wildcats Revenge is just RMC perfection. Honestly, I thought this ride was going to be a mid-tier RMC just because it was a smaller scale RMC, but once again, size doesn't matter. If anything, these smaller scale RMCs pack a much stronger punch than the larger ones. The pacing on this ride is perfection. I love the variety of elements on it. It doesn't have the typical repetitive RMC bunny hops, and each inversion is pretty unique on the ride. It's not just 4 0G rolls, it's more variety to it. The wave turns are much stronger than I expected them to be. The first 0G roll is absurd, especially in the front row. If you're sitting on the left side, brace yourself, unless you want to crack a rib. And the finale, what the f even is that? It literally looks and feels like RMC hit autocomplete to finish the ride, and I'm not mad about it. It's amazing. RMC could not have done this conversion any better. In my opinion, it is the best coaster at Hershey Park. Alright, we're down to our number 1 spot, and we're going down to Fun Spot Atlanta for Sea Serpent. That's the end of the video. Goodbye. Oh wait, that was 2022. I guess it's Air Force One then? In all seriousness, this ride is RMC perfection on steroids. The first half of the ride has great variety to it, and each element packs a huge punch on it. That stall is hang time paradise. And I would say the Outer Bank is probably the best Outer Bank I've ever felt on any coaster. The second half is slightly repetitive, especially the finale, but goddamn does it rip through those final elements. The 0G roll over the arcade is possibly one of the best 0G rolls I've ever been on. I can't say I'm the biggest fan of the finale. It is strong and it's good at what it does, but just a little bit repetitive, and I feel like I would have rather had 2 speed hills over 4 bunny hops. And I'll never understand how a park this small has this. Just makes me excited to see what coasters I'll add to this park in the future. Well, there you have it. That's my top 15 new coaster credits that I've gotten in 2023. Have you ridden any of these rides on this list? Comment down below. Have you ridden any of them? What your opinions are on them? Where do they rank for you? Have you not ridden them? Comment something. I don't care what you say. Just say something down below. Alright guys, I've wrapped the video up here. Hope you enjoyed it. I'll catch you guys in the next loop. See ya.